Archaeo-Hacks from Archaeo-Death. Professor Howard Williams explores shortcuts to a successful archaeology degree.
Hi there, I'm Professor Howard Williams of the Department of History and Archaeology at the University of Chester, and I'm doing these videos for my brand new, fresh archaeology students who are coming as part of the induction week to the University of Chester this coming week. And I want to do some videos, a series of videos actually, that give you some sort of scaffolding, some sort of structure to my personal sense of what your best chances are in terms of building your confidence and skills and getting the most out of your archaeology degree over the next 3 years. So I'm going to deliver to you via a series of videos my Archaeo-Hacks, my sort of shortcuts to getting the most out of your degree, as well as your teaching and your learning, as well as your assignments. I'm going to give you some broader hints and suggestions. Now, this is a personal thing, there's always extra things and everyone has different advice, but I hope that this provides a useful introduction and gives you some sort of sense of how you can move forward with your degree in these challenging times. The university is offering general advice. The programme are giving you programme advice about the structure of the programme. This is more of my personal, broader sense of how you get on and get yourself up and running on an archaeology degree. So hope you like these videos, and I will be also distributing them via my Archaeo-Death YouTube channel so that broader audiences get a sense of them. Now, my first Archaeo-Hack is quite simple, but I want to break it down to multiple sections, so explain what I mean. Archaeo-Hack 1 for doing an archaeology degree is to use your environment. Now, we often see people saying, take breaks from your work, get out and about, as if that's somehow a break from your studies. Well, a little word for you, and it's a positive thing. Your entire environment is archaeology. Everywhere you go is relevant to the archaeological degree you're studying, because the environment we live is utterly human-made over thousands of years, with ancient traces, medieval traces, modern traces, from the city of Chester through to the wider landscape. We're in a borderland city, so don't think of Chester as simply an English city, think of it as a Welsh city too. The borders of Chester go into modern Wales, and you can see so much. The coast, the Cheshire Plain, the Mid-Cheshire Ridge, the estuaries of the Dee and the Mersey, but also the Clwydian Range, the North Wales uplands, Snowdonia. It's all part of your environment while you're studying at Chester, the city and beyond, and therefore use that environment. My Archaeo-Hack is create a bucket list of all the places you want to go and see. And I'll break this down a little bit further into the kinds of suggestions I would make you take in your 3 years. You take the opportunity to get to know various sites. Don't just visit them once. That's the problem with a bucket list, one of the American terms. But think about revisiting. As you learn more about the past through material remains, you will get more out of your landscape, be it outside your front door or for a day trip out. And so my point is, when people say, oh, get out and have a break from your studies, you'll never get a break from your studies, because wherever you go, it will be relevant to your studies. So, and when you go back home to Christmas or at Easter or in the summer, wherever you work, archaeology will be there for you to look at, and sites that you thought were familiar, you'll look at with a new eye. So my Archaeo-Hack is, use that environment, don't just inhabit it, exploit it as part of your learning. And I'm going to break that down further in subsequent sections, but I would start off by saying everywhere you go is part of your learning. So 1A Archaeo-Hack is to think about your entire environment everywhere you go. Point 1B is to look in particular at the city of Chester, where you'll be living, whereverabouts that might be, or if you're commuting from home nearby. If you're familiar with Chester already, look at it again. In your 3 years, your bucket list of sites to visit should be ticked off very rapidly, but you can revisit many of the sites. You'll go on field trips to some of them, but there's so much to see. Not only the historic buildings, and when I say historic, remember I don't just simply mean the fragments of Roman masonry or medieval cellars or the medieval churches. I'm also talking about the early modern, the late modern, the contemporary landscape. All of it is part of our archaeological heritage our environment. So, and all of them relate both to what we can learn from that material evidence about the past, about past societies, but also about the values and strategies of conservation and heritage interpretation we fix to this historic landscape. So we're thinking about the city walls, the Chester Rose, the Rudi with its medieval cross stump, the race course, thinking about the castle, thinking about St John's Priory, the cathedral. All of these are some of the elements that you should be visiting and thinking about with an archaeological eye or an archaeological thinking. Also across in Hanbridge, going across to Hanbridge, you might be going across a 19th century walking bridge or a medieval traffic bridge, the Old Dee Bridge. And to get to Hanbridge, you've got Edgar's Field, which has the oldest open-air Roman shrine still preserved in the country, the Minerva Shrine. Even coming from the university towards the North Gate, you pass the George and Dragon pub, which is probably almost arguably the site of a large Roman cemetery. You'll start to get familiar with the sites and landscapes you can see, and the features of the historic environment you can see, and the landscape that's hidden, the landscape that's behind the scenes that you'll learn about from archaeological reports and a good understanding of the city. Now there's a Chester Walls website, and also a Chester Wiki with lots of historical information about Chester. To that, there's the Chester Archaeological Society's journal and a whole host of other resources in our library. And together you can use this to sort of build your knowledge of one city. So Chester as a city is my Archaeo-Hack 1B point. Get to know it, get used to it, get an intimate knowledge of it, because everything, while you won't be answering your essays about Chester and everything you do in the class will be about Chester, if you can relate your historic environment to your course, you'll be one step ahead. Okay, so 1A is used everywhere you go, is archaeology. 1B, Chester specifically. Archaeo-Hack 1C is the wider, rich landscape of the hinterland of Chester, the towns, villages, hamlets, townships, fields and landscape. And around Chester you have access by bus, by bicycle, by walking, or if you have access to a car or train actually, you have access to a whole range of archaeological landscapes. And because of where Chester is, I'm talking coastline, rivers, canals, the sort of watery landscapes of the seaside, the coast, the estuaries of the Dee and the Mersey, all of which are rich in historic information and heritage. I'm also talking about the lowlands of Cheshire, the mid-Cheshire Ridge with its preserved hill forts and castles, but also the Welsh uplands from the Vale of Llangollen is easily accessible, the North Wales coast to Conwy, the Vale of Clwyd, the Vale of the Conwy, and then beyond. So you have access, and actually to the east, the Peak District. You have different scales. From Chester, you can really access a whole range of historic landscapes, some of which are well preserved and valued as such as Llyn Brenig has its own archaeological trail around the reservoir in Denbighshire. The Vale of Llangollen, which is obviously the focus of one of Wales's 4 World Heritage Sites, the Pontasucta Aqueduct, which carried in the early 19th century the Llangollen Canal, but also Castell Dinas Bran, a medieval castle, Valley Crucis Abbey and the Pillar of Elizeg, which I'm one of the co-directors of the excavation project that took place there. You have the Mid-Cheshire Ridge, as I said, you've got the Cheshire Plain, you've got the Wirral, you've got Flintshire, you've got all of these landscapes. A good example for the Cheshire Plain, Clutton has some very well preserved ridge and furrow field systems, as does Erddig Hall, a National Trust property near Wrexham. Those landscapes, don't think just in terms of your city, think about that broader landscape. Port Sunlight, the model village on the Wirral, there's many sites that you can visit, and there'll be things that experience will tell you about your understanding and appreciation of the prehistoric and historic past, and the heritage significances and strategies in operation in our landscape today. So 1A, use everything. 1B, use Chester. 1C, use that wider landscape of towns, villages, fields, farms, and heathland, upland, rivers, coasts, canals. Part of that, of course, is the historic cities of their own merit, are much larger than Chester, of Manchester, Liverpool, and also the towns of comparable size or smaller, such as Mold, Flint, Wrexham, North Wales' largest town, Nantwich, Northwich, Middlewich, Frodsham, these other settlements, West Kirby on the Wirral, with Hilbury Island close by, St Bridget's Church containing a wonderful collection of Viking stones, Neston on the Wirral is another good example. So it's not just simply the fields and farms and heathlands, the coast, it's also the built environment that you can appreciate better. The final point for point 1 is, I say this is 1D, is to get equipped and informed by regular museum visits. Now, this is something that I particularly regret I didn't do when I was an undergraduate. And where I was as an undergraduate, you have access to a really great city museum, the Grosvenor Museum. Visit it regularly. Not only does it have permanent displays that are of international and national importance, its Roman gallery, its Roman stones gallery, but also natural history, silver, art galleries, but also has many temporary exhibitions. So get to know your local museum. And in addition to that, out around Chester, you have wonderful museums in Manchester, Liverpool. You have wonderful local museums, such as Llangollen's little museum, beautiful little museum, voluntary run. But all of those maybe give you opportunities for volunteering, but if not, just to visit and appreciate your local archaeology. So don't be shy of going into museums, taking notes, getting engaged with the collections. So for me, what I'm wrapping up here is your first Archaeo-Hack is to use where you are. Use Chester and its hinterland in Wales and England, Northwest and West Midlands, its heritage sites, its museums, its historic landscape, and the cityscape of Chester itself to get yourself informed. You can learn so much. Even if you're from the area and you know a bit about it already, don't sit on your laurels. Go out there and find new stuff, whether it's in Chester, whether it's by bicycle, walking, bus, train. Get out there and enjoy and experience and feel part of that historic environment, because you're going to be the future of it. People with an archaeology degree are going to be those that will be studying it, wishing to try and lobby for its conservation, its management, and its heritage interpretation in the future. So, love it, engage with it.
Archaeohacks from Archaeo-Death. Professor Howard Williams explores shortcuts to a successful archaeology degree.